All right, let's dive right in. Today we're popping the hood on something really fascinating in AI. Agents that can do deep, human-like research. We're talking about moving past simple question and answer bots and into a world where AI can genuinely learn and put complex ideas together. So let's get started by asking a question you've probably wondered about yourself.
You know the feeling, right? You ask an AI a really tough question, and the answer you get back feels, well, a little thin. There are a few reasons for this. For one, the model's training data has a cutoff date, so it's clueless about last week's news. And then, of course, there's the famous hallucination problem, where an AI just confidently makes things up. But honestly, the biggest issue is how they search.
So on the left, you've got your standard, simple search. So one and done kind of deal, one query, a quick scan of the top results, and boom, a shallow answer. It just stops way too soon. But on the right, that's deep search, and it is a total game changer. We're talking multiple queries, reading entire web pages, thinking iteratively, and building towards a conclusion that's actually backed by sources. It's the difference between skimming headlines and actually reading the articles.
So here's our game plan. We're going to define what deep search really is, look at the tools it uses, and then we'll get into the weeds on two super important technical pieces, the agent Scratchpad and how it manages its token budget. Then we'll wrap it all up with why this is such a big deal.
A deep search agent doesn't just search once and call it a day. Nope. It acts like a real researcher. It starts with a question, finds some info, and then it literally stops and asks itself, okay, what am I missing? Does this actually answer my original question? Are there any contradictions here? This is how it finds the gaps in its own knowledge before it goes back for another round. It's a real cycle of learning.
And this right here is the heart of it all, the deep search loop. First, it breaks a big, messy question down into smaller, bite-sized ones. Then it hits the web, reads the full page of anything that looks promising. No more skimming, and it saves the most important bits. And then step 5, this is the secret sauce. The agent is prompted to look at its notes and ask, based on my list of questions, what info am I still missing? What new words or ideas came up that I don't get? That moment of self-critique is what kicks off another loop and another until it has a genuinely complete picture.
Now, to run that loop over and over, the agent needs a few specific tools. They're not super complicated on their own, but when you combine them with that research loop, they become incredibly powerful. So the agent basically has 3 tools in its belt. First, a simple web search to find potential sources. Second, a read page tool that, and this is so important, pulls in the entire text of a web page. And third, the save note tool, which lets it hang on to key findings. Now that save note function, that's the really interesting one. It's the key to the agent's efficiency, and it powers something called the Scratchpad.
Okay, let's dig into the first big mechanism that makes this whole thing work, the agent's external brain, its Scratchpad. This is where the magic really starts to happen.
So, what is it? The Scratchpad is pretty much a digital notebook. As the agent reads these huge web pages, it just jots down the most important facts, figures, and quotes, and it keeps track of where they came from. This means it doesn't have to hold every single word of every article in its memory. Just like a human researcher, it relies on its notes.
To really get why this is so critical, we have to talk about tokens. They're kind of like words or pieces of words for an AI. Reading a single full web page can cost about 8,000 tokens. That is a huge amount, and it fills up the AI's short-term memory, its context window, incredibly fast.
But now, look at this. This is the amazing part. After reading that 8,000 token page, the agent can boil down all the essential info into a quick note that's only 200 tokens. It gets to keep the knowledge without paying that massive memory cost. It's an incredible trade.
You know, this quote from the source material just nails it. The Scratchpad isn't some nice-to-have feature. It's an essential compression tool. It's what makes this whole deep research process possible, both technically and financially.
That efficiency brings us to our next big challenge. Because deep search is powerful, yeah, but it's also expensive. It burns through tokens. So just like a human researcher has a deadline and a budget, this AI agent has to manage its resources really, really carefully. And it has 3 main tricks to stay on budget. First, it's smart about trimming content. It knows the good stuff is usually in the intro and conclusion, so it might just cut out the middle. Second, like we just saw, it swaps that giant 8,000 token page for a tiny 200 token note. And third, it has hard limits, like a rule that says, okay, after you've read 5 pages, it's time to stop searching and write the answer.
And this just shows you the impact. I mean, the difference is night and day. An unmanaged search just burns through tokens like crazy. But a managed search, using these budgeting techniques, it's drastically more efficient. It lets the agent go so much deeper with the resources it has.
Okay, let's walk through how this all comes together. Say you ask about AI long-term memory. The agent starts by breaking that down, and it finds a blog post and a research paper. It reads them both, saves the key points to its scratchpad, and then, this is the crucial step. This is the thinking part. In that fourth iteration, it reviews its notes. Its internal prompt forces it to ask, did I answer all my sub-questions? And it realizes, wait, I know what long-term memory is, but I have nothing on the practical trade-offs. A simple agent would have just stopped there. But this deep search agent creates a new mission for itself. Find a source that compares these methods. It forms a brand new, super targeted query to fill that specific gap, searches again, and then it puts everything together for a truly thorough answer.
So what does this all mean for the future of AI? Let's boil it all down to the core principles you'd need to build these kinds of smarter agents. Look, the really big takeaway here is that this kind of intelligence doesn't come from one giant magic model. It comes from a really smart process. First, that iterative process. The loop is everything. It's way more important than any single prompt. Second, the scratchpad is absolutely essential. It's the agent's working memory. Third, query decomposition. Breaking big questions into small ones is a superpower. Fourth, and this is so important, the methodology is baked into the prompt. The initial instructions don't just tell the agent what to find, they teach it how to be a researcher. Fifth, budgeting. Managing tokens isn't a cleanup job, it's a core part of the design. And finally, verification. The whole process just naturally leads to cross-referencing sources, which builds trust and helps fight misinformation.
And all of this leads us to one last really big question to think about. We're building agents that can do more than just fetch facts. They can conduct real, comprehensive research. So, when these systems can investigate things more thoroughly and tirelessly than any person ever could, what kind of impossibly hard questions will we finally be able to ask? Thanks for tuning in.